Good morning, Year 8, and welcome to our last lesson of the week. It's Friday again. Go around very, very quickly these days, don't they? Anyway, before we get on to the travel writing we're going to do today, which I know you're going to enjoy, I want you to think about this do now, which is to do with the wind in the willows. Do you think Mr. Toad is immature? Write a short paragraph and include a quotation. Now, you might think that he's on the surface of it, he's a grown up, but he does do very childish things in my view. Or maybe you just think he's a bit of an idiot. I personally think he is quite immature because he's not nasty. He's very self-centered and so on, but he does look out for his friends. So anyway, write a short paragraph stating your decision on that, and include a quotation, and I'll give you 8 minutes to do that. Now today you're going to create your own country, and there's a thing to do in the lesson, and then we're going to write an extract for a guidebook for your own country. So put into the your title is creating a country and writing a guidebook. Before we can go any further, we need a name for our country. It can be anything you want, if it's going to be an island, think about it like that. If it's landlocked, if it's floating in space, although I think we should probably keep these countries on Earth. So think of a name for your country. I'll just give this could take ages, so I'm just going to give you 5 minutes. I'm going to put you on a bit of time pressure there. A name for your country. Off you go, and then on to the next slide. Creative writers, authors have been creating countries for years in science fiction, in all kinds of fantasy, science fiction and fantasy mainly. This slide here, some of you might recognise, is from the Terry Pratchett Discworld series that I read when I was much younger than I am now. And very good they are too. If you haven't read them, you should. There's loads of them. If you get into it, there's a lot of them to read. They're highly imaginative and also very funny. So read those. But he created a whole world called Discworld, which floated through space on the back of a turtle and some elephants. And this one is something I read also when I was much younger. This is the Lord of the Rings, part of the map of Middle Earth at the end of the Third Age. Very, very detailed. If you've not read J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, if you like detailed fantasy, then it's good stuff to read, and it's beautifully written as well. So there we are. There's two worlds or countries that have been created by writers to give you some inspiration. Now, you've got to think very carefully about your country before you make any decisions. Now, the prime things this country has to have, or needs to appeal to, is it needs to be somewhere that people are going to want to visit. So it's got to be appealing, exciting and diverse, something that appeals to all sorts of different people, young and old, rich and poor, people from all different walks of life. So it needs to be exciting and diverse, be somewhere that you can sell to your reader. What we're working towards is writing an extract for a guidebook for your country. So you need to be able to say lots of positive things about it. And then it needs to have some sort of one special thing that makes people choose this country over others in the world. It could be the weather. It could be that the people are really, really nice. It could be that they have the most magnificent food. It could be that you can drive cars at the age of 11. It could be that there's or any, there could be no age limit on things, which would mean that you guys could do whatever you wanted. So I think that's quite a good one, actually. So you've got to find one, on top of those other three things, you've got to find one thing that makes this country special and different from other countries. So I'll give you 10 minutes just to scribble down some notes on those four things, answering those or fulfilling those four statements there. I'll give you 10 minutes to do that. And we're going to look at these questions here. You need to write bullet point responses to all of these. So what is the name of your country? Hopefully you've got that now. Where in the world is your country, roughly? What are the native people like? This could be one of the big selling points of it. Maybe they're really, really nice. What does your country look like from space? Is it an island or attached to other countries? Quite like the idea of an island myself. What are the main cities or parts of your country? You've got to have at least 3. So I would go with 3 cities which are dotted around in different parts of your country. What's the weather like? Is it always the same, or does it differ depending on where you are? If it's an island and it's fairly small, then the weather's going to be fairly similar all over it, isn't it? Or maybe, if you, like in Australia, you've got rainforests, ski slopes, deserts. They've got all pretty much all examples of all of the world's different climates in Australia. What are the best parts of your country? Is it good to visit? Are the cities really good there? The beaches good there? The mountains good there? Why? What's special about the mountains there? They're good for skiing, tobogganing, climbing. How can you travel to your country, and how much will it cost? Where can you stay in your country? Is it a sort of place you go camping in, or has it got ritzy hotels? We're going right up market here, where there's hotels with amazing views of beaches and so on. What's the food like? Is that a big selling point here, the food? Are there any interesting plants or animals to see? Going back to Australia again, they've got all kinds of things there, most of which apparently kill you. But nevertheless, are there any interesting plants or animals to see? And any key landmarks like Buckingham Palace and Hyde Park, or possibly natural landmarks like, again, back to Australia, Ayers Rock and so on and so forth. So just make a bullet point list that answers these questions, and I'll give you 15 minutes to do that. Then on to the next slide. So you may not want to include all of that in your guide. What do you think is that, bearing in mind this guidebook is designed to make people want to go there, we need to be relentlessly positive. How are you going to set it out on the page? I'll show you that in just a moment. And what kind of language are you going to use? Think about the travel writing we've looked at before, the blogs and the travelogues and the guides, which particularly we're looking at, are fairly formal. We're going to be looking at some formal language. No abbreviations, no acronyms, which is when you go ASAP rather than as soon as possible. You have to write things out properly. This is a formal piece of writing. Just have to think about that for a minute. You don't need to write anything down with that slide, and then go on to the next one. Okay, now here's an example of how it could be laid out. You've got your contents on the left there. Why go? Why would you go there? You can see that you don't need me to run through the whole thing for you. Have a good look at that slide and take off the pieces that you think would be particularly good for your country, and draw it out in your books and fill it in. And then, but before you do that, let's go on to the next slide. You can come back to this slide and look at it for inspiration about how to lay it out. But before we do that, let's go to the next slide. So creating your guide, you need to include facts and useful information, text boxes as I've just showed you, and headings for each section. You can put on pictures and maps if you want, and use a wide range of vocabulary and complex sentences. So there you are, Year 8. I'm looking forward to seeing some of your work there. It's been another good week for you lot. Well done. Congratulations. Have a lovely weekend, and I will speak to you on Monday.